Hello and welcome to this webinar. Today we're going to look at writing and presenting your academic project. This webinar has been developed by the Academic Writing Centre at Technological University, Dublin. The purpose of this webinar is to inform you as to the main ideas around presenting your academic project, but also to contextualize this within and in relation to an essay or another written project you are expected to present as part of your work here at TU Dublin. As you can see here, we are going to look and provide you with a general introduction to the topic. We're going to provide you with a context and a look at some aspects that will help you understand what a presentation is and what it requires. We are focusing more particular in the content to be included in the presentation and also the dimension that the visual elements bring to a presentation. And finally, with a quick conclusion to the presentation itself. Perhaps it is a good idea for you to reflect on these two aspects that are contained in this slide. So it is perhaps an idea to reflect on what your understanding is about the differences or indeed similarities between written and oral communication. And also, if you could think about the specific challenges that you foresee on delivering an oral presentation in an academic setting. These challenges can be of a technical nature, such as not knowing what program to use or how to do it, or of a personal nature related to confidence, or perhaps this is the first time you are required to present in a language that is not your first language. So this reflection will allow you to then perhaps tailor what we cover later and adapt it to your own needs. So both written and oral communication use language as a means to transfer information. And in this image here, you can see these two circles for spoken and in pink for written language, and it lists some of the features or characteristics associated with either spoken or written language. As you can see in the center, there is an intersection between these two worlds, if you like, and those are the commonalities between these two forms of communication and the language used in these forms of communication. And you can see that they both have a logical structure. They present a cohesive and fluid argument, and they provide rich and varied evidence. In this presentation, we are concerned more with the spoken world, and you can see there the characteristics. So the use of personal pronouns is a part of what we do. The language used is perhaps more colloquial in nature. The words used are more of a familiar nature. So that ensures that everybody understands what is being said. It uses numbers of transitions or link words or phrases, such as mentioned above, to keep everybody's attention and to provide this coherent approach. The type of sentences used is perhaps shorter, less complex syntax is used. So this gives us a framework as to the language that is used in spoken and written communication, the commonalities between these two worlds, and the features of the spoken and written language. This slide here presents you with features that are present in essays and in presentations. You can see the features listed on the left-hand side, those what they call elements such as design, title, introduction, body, conclusion, paragraphs, sentences, etc. And you can see that there are numbers of great commonalities between these two forms, the written form and a presentation format. And as you can see, it would ensure that perhaps transferring what you already have in an essay to a presentation can follow the same structure of introduction, body, and conclusion. And also the use of visual elements is included as well. So you may use them and transfer them from your written project to your presentation. Very importantly, this idea of in-text citations, we will refer to this at a later stage. The idea of using evidence in support of our ideas or concepts used in the presentation. And this is in-text citation that appears as quotes, paraphrases, summaries in both the essay and the presentation. And as you can see, you're also expected to provide a reference list at the end of the presentation or the essay. So this is a summary of elements or features that are common between the essay and the presentation. So we now move on to providing a definition about presentation and focusing more particularly in and around presentation. So we can say that a presentation is an oral communication exercise with visual support, either text and image or with text and images. It is used widely both in academic settings and in the professional world. And the reason for this is because it is well understood that having the verbal oral communication supported by images or visuals aids retention, acquisition of new information, helps understand new topics and ideas, and learn ultimately about something new. As we were saying, a presentation needs to be grounded in research and of a particular topic, and you will do well in adopting a focus to give direction to the presentation. As we were saying, the objective, the general objective of a presentation is to share and disseminate ideas, concepts, projects, to present to an audience, to our listeners, this idea or these ideas or concepts. But it may also have a specific purpose. Are we during this presentation trying to also persuade or convince, or just to inform, or just to explore, or to put forward a proposal, an explanation? So it is a good idea for you to remember what the purpose of the presentation is, and perhaps this links to the essay instructions that you have perhaps completed and that you're trying to transfer to a presentation mode. In relation to the content to be included in the presentation, if you're starting afresh, it is important to gather information, to research the topic thoroughly. And in order to do that, you are advised to consult reliable sources and publications, academic texts, government publications, And for that information to be current and up-to-date, very important to have up-to-date information on that particular project. It is your role as presenter and of a particular topic to critically evaluate the information you have gathered and also its relevance to your theme and your topic. In order to organize this content, it is a good idea, and I refer back to what we just said before, to clarify the specific objective of your presentation. So if it is to inform, explore, analyze, to describe, how is that going to have an influence in the structure that you adopt for your presentation? It is essential to define what are the main sections to be included in the presentation so that the audience can understand your topic. At times, it is a good idea to prepare an outline and even sometimes to write a script for each of the slides. So this really is an expansion of what we were covering in the slide before. And if we're writing an outline to the presentation, you're looking at categorizing your information in a central topic and subsidiary or secondary topics. What is the main idea? What are the points associated with that idea, with that topic? Once more, consider the overall and the specific objective. Is your presentation providing an explanation, an analysis, an evaluation? As you know, an analysis conveys the idea of breaking a topic into its constituent parts. So how are you going to do that? Perhaps you're going to adopt a chronological approach, so presenting a topic and its development through time, or perhaps a thematical approach. What are the themes or aspects of this particular topic? Or perhaps it's a causal approach, cause and effect. So this organizational pattern will facilitate the distribution, if you like, of the information and to provide context and scope. Always remember that your mode of communication is oral, so you cannot be too wordy or too complex in what you're trying to present in this format. Finally, to organize content, perhaps is a good idea to think about this image of the jigsaw and how all the pieces fit together in order to provide an image. As we were saying, perhaps organize this content in a sequential and logical manner. This idea of the general to specific, which is sometimes colloquially called the funnel technique. So the general provides the context and the background, and you then go to the specific details for your topic and how you are applying it or analyzing it in a particular context. It is a good idea to introduce new terminology, new words in your in the presentation, depending on your audience and their level of knowledge, and always provide references to the ideas that you are exploring and presenting in your presentation. So this slide just gives you a graphic representation of the three main elements of the presentation, and it is structured around an introduction, a main body, and a conclusion. And we're going to see these three elements in detail in the next few slides. So to start with the introduction and what is the communicative function of the introduction is perhaps to engage your audience in the first place. So it is an idea to first introduce yourself and perhaps your role, and to capture your audience's attention. You may choose to do one of the following, perhaps a quote or an anecdote or an image that comprehensively refers to the presentation, to the presentation's topic and focus very clearly. It is essential in a presentation to maintain your audience's attention. So how are you going to do that? It is a good idea to provide a brief outline as to the sections and elements that you're going to cover during the presentation. This outline is a roadmap for your presentation. In general, we could say that the length of the introduction of a presentation takes about a couple of minutes. In the body of the presentation, you obviously are exploring your topic in detail, and you will do well in organizing the information in a sequential manner and building a logical argument that acts as a thread throughout the presentation. So to refer back to what we've said before, perhaps you're looking at providing a chronological exploration or a broad to a specific approach. You, during the body or through the body of the presentation, you are elaborating and expanding on the main points and subpoints. You're providing evidence, quotes and summaries and paraphrases of what the authors you have consulted have recorded on these points. Also, the idea of cohesion, we've already mentioned this. The idea of using language that signposts and directs the listener's attention to the thread of our argument. So the use of transition words, phrases that point to what's coming next or what has just been said, and that creates a central theme to your presentation. Finally, the conclusion to your presentation contains a summary of what the main points you have covered. You perhaps highlight the theme and the main topics. It's not a good idea to include new information at this point, but it is a take-home idea is leaving the audience with one memorable idea. So if they were to forget everything about the presentation and the topic you have covered, what is that one idea that you want them to remember? You obviously at this point leave time for the listeners, for your audience to ask questions, so that you can clarify some points that you have not included fully. You may also acknowledge issues or shortcomings at this point. So this concludes that section on the structure of the presentation with its introduction, body, and conclusion. And if you think of it in very colloquial terms, the introduction, you tell them what you're going to tell them. In the body, you tell them. And in the conclusion, you tell them what you've told them. And this wraps it up and aids understanding and retention of the information that you have shared with your audience. We're moving now to this next section in which we are looking at the visual aids that are used in presentations. The reason for this visual aids is that it helps to focus attention. It also conveys ideas in a comprehensive manner, and you are to consider the quality and appropriateness of the images you are using, and also if you take images and graphs and tables, there are issues of copyright that you may be you need to be aware of. Perhaps it's a good idea for some settings to provide paper handouts of your presentation, particularly in an exam situation. And finally, you may also share some props depending on the type of presentation that you're doing. This could be product samples or some objects or marketing materials. They all aid in helping you transfer information and connect with your audience. So just some general points about the design of visual elements. And sort of a take-home message is to avoid clutter. Clutter with too many images or text that is too large or too much of it. So your text needs to be clear and readable, and you need to adopt a design format that is consistent throughout the presentation, and this is translated in the type of font you use or the colors or the icons you use. If you're using images, use them sparingly and select images of high quality. So each of the slides in your presentation should contain one message. So one slide, one message. Take into account the length of the presentation, the time you have been allocated in order to decide on how many slides to include. You can think that perhaps and allow around 2 minutes for each slide. This is a good pace. And for each of the slides, a good point to keep in mind is the rule of 6 by 6. So 6 words per line and 6 points per slide. So a maximum of 6 points per slide will make your slides readable and engaging. So the text that you are selecting to include in your presentation, when we're looking at the font size, we're looking at the 20-point font maximum. You are to take into account the color of your background and the color of your text, and to use contrast to your advantage. So as you possibly know, some colors will not show well, and also you may spend a bit of time in designing a master slide and create hierarchies within that master slide. But in the master slide, you will also be able to decide on the background color to your slide, to include page numbers on each slide, icons to be used. So it is an idea to explore the master slide, particularly in PowerPoint. That works well. Not advisable to use capitals. Instead, use bold, highlight in bold some words or elements that you want your audience to focus on, to focus their attention on. And in general, we can say that the body, the text is in small letters. So we're coming to the end of this presentation, and in this slide we are going to outline 6 steps for success. So the first one is to stay on message. So do not digress during your presentation. Keep in mind what is the focus of your presentation, what are you trying to convey, what is the specific purpose to your presentation, what aids you in achieving that objective. Sometimes you may find that it's a good idea to rehearse in advance of the presentation date, so you can deliver this presentation to a classmate and get feedback in order to find out if there are any glitches or any issues that could be improved on. In the presentation itself, at the exposition, remember to engage your audience. This can be done also with your posture, your body language, your gestures, eye contact. You're trying to convey this idea of being self-assured and in charge of this presentation. This is that translates also in your voice, in how you vocalize and how you talk in terms of the volume, the pace, the pitch, the inflections that you use for questions or cadences for attract attention. Very important here not to exceed the allocated time. This is particularly true at the end of year examinations with presentations, as everybody is in a tight schedule and we cannot really exceed the allocated time. Use a language that is appropriate to your setting, to the academic topic you're exploring, and connect the ideas by using transitions and signposting the various moves throughout your presentation. So what are the top 5 mistakes that people make when presenting? So the first one is reading from notes or from the text slides. Remember that your audience can read and see what you have in the slides. So there's no point in just reading what's there. You are to elaborate on it. What's on this slide is to act as a prompt for you to expand or explain in more detail. It is also a frequent problem that the text included in the slide is far too long, and people are just reading a text. So remember here the rule of the 6x6 and the idea of bullet points and 6 words per line and 6 points per slide. We already made reference to this idea of exceeding the allocated time, and a different idea is cluttering your slides and your presentation with too much text, too many slides, sometimes too many slides and too many images, and sometimes those images not being appropriate to the setting or to the topic explored. And finally, this idea of not having a cohesive structure in your presentation. I have included here tutorials, video, YouTube tutorials for PowerPoint, for Prezi and for Powtoon that you may go to in your own time and educate yourself on these different presentation programs. Of course, PowerPoint is the one we tend to use, but Prezi and Powtoon offer other alternatives to this. In conclusion, in order to complete and present successfully, we need to prepare, and we prepare by researching our topic thoroughly, by adopting specific focus for the presentation, and this in turn in turn informs the structure of the presentation, the sections within it. So, you know, the preparation is fundamental to succeeding at presenting. And the more we prepare, the better understanding we have as to what to include, what to leave out. We learn to understand the topic, and we learn to transmit this information to others and to share this information with others. Practice is important, and we were saying before how perhaps rehearsing the presentation, writing script for the presentation may be a good idea, perhaps at the initial stages of doing presentations. It is important. When we are delivering the presentation at the exposition stage of the presentation, remember this idea of connecting with your audience by either giving them an insightful view of the topic or a quote, and then maintaining that, maintaining their attention throughout the presentation by signposting and by giving directions as to how you're going to cover the different elements and how they relate and interrelate to each other. Issues related to posture and voice and the quality of our images are also important. So in conclusion, this idea of the prepare, practice and deliver is good for you to keep in mind. Here you can find the references used in preparing this presentation, and you may engage with them in your own time to find out some additional information if you require. Finally, I would like to thank you for your interest in this presentation and for your attention throughout. You can reach the Academic Writing Centre through our website or via email. And in our website, you will find information on other resources or workshops, or on how to book a one-to-one appointment. So once more, thank you for your attention, and looking forward to meeting you at the Academic Writing Centre. Thank you.